Do the New York Mets really have a chance to land Roki Sasaki? I'll talk about that and all the latest at the winter meetings on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. There's a part of me that's very nervous that I hit the record button tonight because it is a little past 12:30 Eastern time, and things are happening. Jake Berger just got traded from the Marlins to the Rangers. There's been multiple trades today. Andres Jimenez got traded. He's no longer a Guardian, so the Francisco Lindor trade looking a little bit better. Granted, the Guardians seem to have made out pretty well on a series of trades. But the bottom line is there's a lot of executives up right now in Dallas at the winter meetings, and there could be a Mets transaction that happens that makes me have to, I would say, scrap this show because we're going to talk about Roki Sasaki, and that's going to be evergreen. So we'll still soldier on with this episode regardless, but I am very curious to see if anything happens tonight or bleeding into tomorrow, as it does seem like things are starting to pick up a little bit. But let's focus on the main topic of the day, and that is Roki Sasaki. I have not broached the discussion much on the show throughout the offseason because we had time, and we still do. Roki Sasaki is an international free agent that will not sign until the week of January 15th to the 22nd. But his agent, Joel Wolf, spoke with the media today, and there was a very interesting report that came out from Jim Bowden, and it said that Roki Sasaki's agency is very high on Jeremy Hefner's ability to develop pitching. Sasaki is said to be valuing endorsement opportunities, winning, and pitching development as he decides which team to play for. Now, first things first, if you're not familiar with the name, who is Roki Sasaki? He is a 23-year-old phenom from Japan who at one point was averaging 99 miles per hour on his fastball. This past year, he saw his fastball dip a couple of ticks down to 97 miles per hour as he dealt with some injuries, but he has the ability, when healthy, to ramp that fastball right back up to 99 miles per hour plus. He has been on the gun over 100 miles per hour. He's got a devastating splitter. This is a pitcher that, if he was just a pitching prospect, and technically he is, he would be right there with Jackson Jobe as the best pitching prospect in baseball, and probably the best. He's that good, okay? Sasaki is the type of lottery ticket that you can land here, where it is honestly like the most value you can find on the free agent market, because he is going to slide right into your rotation and he's going to be dirt cheap because he is a minor league free agent. He is not 25 years old, but he has been posted. What does that mean? If you're 25 years old, like Yoshinobu Yamamoto was last year, or if you served, 6 years of professional baseball in the Nippon Professional Baseball League, you are a free agent. That means you can sign a major league deal. You're a major league free agent. That's why Yamamoto was able to get over $300 million. Sasaki is going the Shohei Ohtani route. Ohtani came over before he was 25, signed with the Angels, had to play 6 years there, and went through the arbitration process, Rookie of the Year, MVP, all of these things that allowed him to, by the end of it, make more money than anyone ever had in arbitration. But it takes time to get to that point. So it is going to be a situation here where if you land him, you get 6 years of control, just like any minor league, position or any minor league prospect. And you sign him out of that same bonus pool that you would use to sign some 17-year-old out of the Dominican Republic. It's the same amount of money that all these teams have. It's within $1 million of each other. We'll talk about that a little more in the next segment about how much the money the Mets have to offer. But it really is open bidding. And the fact that Sasaki's agency values the Mets is a really good thing to think about, because they should at least get a meeting with Roki Sasaki. David Stern said they already had prepared a video presentation for Sasaki, and then it's a waiting game to see if they get invited to have a meeting with him, and then they'll go through that process. Another note when it comes to Sasaki and his agency, his agent Joel Wolf also represents Kodai Senga, and his agency, Wasserman, represents Clay Holmes. So, Bowden's report does check out that they would value what the Mets have to offer when it comes to developing pitching. Also, another note from David Stearns on Clay Holmes. He was asked today about role, and he said that Clay Holmes has long wanted to be a starting pitcher. He's coming here because he wants to start. We believe he's a starter, and he's going to get every opportunity to do that. So they're not planning on signing 2 starters and then just putting him in the bullpen. He's going to get a full crack at the starting rotation. He also said there's no set innings limit on Clay Holmes and actually on any of their pitchers. So if they sign Sasaki, it would be the same thing. He said they monitor their guys and they trust that the data will tell them if and when they need to taper guys off when it comes to a particular innings limit, but it's never set in stone. It's more based on what their data is telling them, what their trainers are seeing as far as the health of the pitcher. Now, what did Joel Wolf say today about Sasaki? He said a lot of interesting things. He laid the groundwork for every team to be in on the bidding. And that could be a little bit of posturing, right? If Sasaki already knows, I want to be a Dodger. You don't want to just come out, Joel Wolf, and say, yeah, he's going to be a Dodger right now. We haven't met with any teams yet formally or, under the process because he has to be posted before he's supposed to meet with teams. So he was just posted. There might be a little bit of that going on here saying he's open to all 30 teams. But he did mention that a mid-market team might be better. He said, I think there's an argument to be made that a smaller mid-market team might be more beneficial for him as a soft landing spot coming from Japan, given what he's been through. He talked about a lot of negativity in the media that Sasaki has received because of wanting to come to Major League Baseball early, and that has been considered in Japan disrespectful, compared to what you're supposed to do, which is go through the whole process, get to 25 years old, and then your parent club, your team in Japan then gets to cash in. I think was it Chiba Lotte is his team. They're not going to get next to anything for a stud pitcher because the most he's going to sign for is like $7 million compared to getting a cut of a $300+ million contract like the one that Yoshinobu Yamamoto signed with the Dodgers last year. When it comes to Roki Sasaki and his preferences, Joel Wolf said that there aren't any individual teams or cities that he knows too much about, and this is all sort of a process for him to get to know those teams and get a sense of where he wants to land. He did say, when asked specifically if Roki Sasaki could handle pitching New York, that he would have no problem with it. He said, I think, and also he said that having a mentor is not a necessity, but it could help. He said, I think it could be good to have an older player to help him, show him the ropes. But anyone that knows Roki Sasaki, this is one of the most driven, intense players I'd ever known and have been around, incredibly hardworking. And I wouldn't say that he would necessarily need it to succeed. I think he'll be just fine wherever he goes, whether he has a Japanese senpai or not. And that is basically just a mentor. But you're talking about, again, the type of pitching prospect that could be your ace for 6 years at dirt cheap costs for at least the first 3 years until he hit arbitration. So the fact that you have an agency that the Mets have worked with to land Kodai Senga, that they were able to land one of their other clients, Clay Holmes, who was going to make a jump from leaving to starting, and they thought the Mets were the place to go for him to make that switch, it does lead you to believe the Mets have at least a decent shot to get in front of Sasaki and pitch their case. But how much money will they have to potentially give him? What are the other teams that are going to be in the mix? I want to talk about all that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So make sure you're really confident. You know what you're going to win. You had the bet in mind. Then you sign up and you place that $5 bet to win $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 12,000 subscribers. We had a big jump over the last couple of days. I appreciate all of you who have subscribed. Again, just hit that red button as we try to work towards our next goal. All right, so what does Roki Sasaki want? Place to win, place to develop, also being in line for endorsements. What team checks all those boxes? The Cubs might check it a little bit because there's also that mid-market thing. And yes, Chicago is one of the bigger markets, but it's not New York or LA. And they do have a potential mentor for him in Shota Imanaga, as well as Seiya Suzuki, although it seems like Seiya Suzuki might be traded, and obviously he's a hitter, but just another Japanese player on the team. The Cubs make some sense because of that. But do they develop pitchers well? I don't think they necessarily have that reputation. Now, the Dodgers have long been seen as the favorite for Sasaki because they have Ohtani, they have Yamamoto, and it just seems natural to expect Sasaki to go that way as well. It's on the West Coast. You know, Joe Wolf said today that West Coast doesn't matter, but we also know that a lot of times Japanese players typically prefer to be on the West Coast because it is a shorter flight to get over to Japan. And you're, closer, I think, as well on time zones. But regardless, the Dodgers do check all the boxes that you would expect. Endorsements, you would think so. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Ohtani is going to take a large portion of them, as would Yamamoto, but there could be some type of a deal where all of them on the same team are getting joint endorsements. Develop pitching, check. Chance to win, check as well. Mentors, yeah, they got it. The one thing they don't have is they have a crowded rotation. Does Roki Sasaki want to go to a team where he might end up in a bullpen? I think he'd be great in a bullpen, but I don't think he wants that to start his career. I think he wants the runway to be a starting pitcher and to really develop into one of the best in the game. So I think that is one thing that could hold the Dodgers back a little bit in this sweepstakes. Also, does he want to be the man for his own team? You go there, you're going to be third fiddle. There's no doubt about it. So maybe he wants to try his luck with the Padres. You have the mentor in Yu Darvish, who is as respected as anyone when it comes to Japanese-born players. It's not a major market, so maybe a softer landing spot with the media, chance to win, that checks off the box. Developing pitching. I would not say that the Padres have that reputation. Endorsements, I wouldn't say that as well. I think it makes some sense, but it doesn't check all the boxes. The Mets, in a lot of ways, check almost all the boxes. Chance to win, check. They just got Juan Soto. Place to develop pitching, check. That's been reported. They value what the Mets have on that front, their pitching development. Mentor in place, Kodai Senga. Same agent. Endorsements, I think him and Kodai Senga can split those up pretty well. Big market to be able to get those endorsements. Spot in the rotation, I think the Mets would have no problem guaranteeing that. Chance to be the man. Who is the ace of the New York Mets right now? Probably Kodai Senga. Can Sasaki outpitch him or at least be the 1B to his 1A? Possibly. So I really do think that the Mets have a decent shot at being the best landing spot that can make the best case to Sasaki at being able to develop him, being able to win, getting those endorsements. If it ends up being Mets versus Dodgers for the next 6 years and Sasaki's in his prime and he's the guy that's going up toe-to-toe against Ohtani and Yamamoto, he has a chance to really build that endorsement side, and that's where he's going to be getting paid the next couple of years. He's not going to be getting paid much when it comes to salary from the beginning, or when it comes to bonus, I should say. He's going to make the minimum in the big leagues, but he gets that bonus, right? The same thing that all these international free agents who come over from the Latin American countries primarily are getting, that same bonus pool that is spent. That's where he's going to get his contract. And as Joe Wolf said, the bonus pool amounts are so negligible. My advice to him is don't make a decision based on that, because the long term of your career is where you earn your money. It's probably not advisable to make a short-term decision. With that said, $7 million is better than $1.5 million. And there's some teams that have money committed. There's others that don't. When it comes to the bonus pool, you can have money docked for certain transactions. If you sign a free agent, like the Mets just did in Juan Soto, that might cost you $1 million in your bonus pool spending. So, and there's bonus pool money that gets traded According to an article from Baseball America, the way these teams are fitting in right now when it comes to the bonus pool, you have the Reds, Tigers, Marlins, Brewers, Twins, Athletics, Mariners, and Rays that have the max amount, which is $7,555,500. Of those teams, the only one that jumps out to me is the Brewers because they do have the ability to develop pitching. They are definitely a smaller market team. Endorsement dollars, I don't know about that for Sasaki there. Chance to win, that's actually a check. So I think the Brewers are a dark horse for sure. Teams that are around 6.9 million, the D-backs, Orioles, Gardens, Rockies, Royals, Pirates, Guardians stand out for their ability to develop pitching and a chance to win. I look at both of those teams, Brewers and Guardians, as a dark horse. And honestly, I think it'd be amazing for baseball if one of those teams landed him. Just to be cool to see that talent kind of disperse around the league a little bit. Then you have the bonus pool at $6.26 million, which does include the Mets, as well as the Braves, Red Sox, Cubs, White Sox, Angels, Yankees, Phillies, Padres, Rangers, Blue Jays, Nationals. Now, $6.26 million. There's a couple other teams that have less than that. The Dodgers actually only have $5.1 million. Giants have $5.1 as well. Astros, Cardinals, $5.6 million to spend. But the Mets have already committed $5.2 million in a signing bonus, as the New York Post has reported, to 16-year-old shortstop Elian Pena. Now, that leaves them with $1 million. You also still have the ability, once you allocate all of that bonus pool, to sign international free agents with the bonuses of $10,000 or less. So it doesn't mean that your entire international class would just be Pena and Sasaki, but you'd spend all your money there, and then you'd have to just try to find those diamonds in the rough. The Mets would either have to renege their deal with Pena and either get rid of it and just say, we're going to spend all the money on Sasaki, or they would have to renegotiate and maybe Pena takes a little bit less, still gets to be with the Mets organization, and Sasaki probably takes less than he can get out there from other teams as well. That is a big hurdle for the Mets because I don't think they want to give up on Elian Pena, who is a shortstop prospect that has a really good bat that they are obviously excited about. They're giving him the biggest bonus they ever have, or at least that's what they're expected to do once they are able to in that window opening up on January 15th. You really have to just win this bidding based on selling him on the Mets being the perfect landing spot. Yeah, you can make $7.5 million with the Brewers, but off the field this year, you might make $10 million as a Met, right? That's really where this comes down to. It's being the perfect fit more than the money. How they figure out the money side of things, to be determined. And ultimately, if it really came down to it and Wasserman says you can have Roki Sasaki, but you need to give him $5 million and you have to lose Elian Pena. He's a 16-year-old shortstop. Sasaki is a 23-year-old that would slide into your rotation immediately. You just suck it up and lose the guy that you had promised that money to. If it really came down to it, Sasaki is worth it. He would be an immediate upgrade in your rotation right now with a win-now team that has Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor getting paid a combined $85 million. You do that. You do it, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out. The bottom line is the Mets are in this thing. Whether they get it or not is to be determined, but I think the Mets have as good a chance as anyone, really, unless he is just already set on the Dodgers or one of these teams. But I really think the Mets have a really good shot here to wow in the presentation and convince Sasaki that coming to the Mets is the best thing for his career because they're going to get the most out of him. They're going to keep him on the mound. He's going to have Kodai Senga as a mentor, but one that he can outshine, and he can be the Mets ace for 6 years in a window where they expect to be one of the more prominent teams in Major League Baseball, who just landed the highest paid player in the sport. All of that stuff should leave an impression on Sasaki that could land him in a Mets uniform. But we're going to find that out in about a month. Again, he will make his decision, and Joel Wolf said he will sign during the week of the 15th through the 22nd. That would give him enough time to be able to get a visa to be there for spring training. So that is the expectation here, and we'll see if the Mets end up getting that interview. And if they actually can pull this thing off. It's not something you plan your offseason around, and David Stern said as much today, but it's definitely something you pursue as best as you possibly can, because if you are the team that he chooses, you are getting 6 years of control of a guy that would immediately be the best pitching prospect in baseball. Anyway, in the next segment, I'm going to go through some of the latest transactions at the winter meetings, and only a few of them that might relate to the Mets. A couple of rumors, so we'll go through all of that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so what happened today at the winter meetings? A lot. Max Fried signed with the Yankees, 8 years, $218 million. All the Yankees fans with sour grapes talking about the Juan Soto contract being bad. You got Max Fried pitching until his age, was it 38 season, 39 season? Carlos Rodon locked up for a long time. David Stearns doesn't mess with those long-term investments on starting pitchers because they typically end poorly. The Yankees have 3 of them on their books. Not saying it's not going to work out. Not saying it's a bad signing for next year. I think the Yankees saw this market that doesn't have a lot of good position players and say, you know what, we're going to build on a strength. We're going to get a number 2 for Garrett Cole, because unfortunately for them, Carlos Rodon has not been the number 2 they were hoping he would be. And Fried is a very high floor pitcher. So they're just trying to build out that rotation as a way to probably get around what might not be the best offense next year without Soto. Obviously, they have Judge. They got a lot of holes in that lineup. So we'll see how they fill those. It is interesting to see him get 8 years. My projection at Just Baseball, when I did our free agent predictions article, was 7 years, $190 million. And I remember some of our other writers on the staff thought I was going too far in the years there, but he got more than that. He actually got about the exact same average annual value that I projected, slightly more. But, I mean, both of them, my projection and what he got was in the $27 million range. So now Fried's off the board, and the Mets were reportedly not in on him at all. They're also not expected to be in on Corbin Burns, which means they are still shopping in that market where you have the Sean Manaea, Jack Flaherty, Nick Pavettas of the world, as well as Nathan Eovaldi. But oh wait, Eovaldi has signed with the Rangers a 3-year, $75 million deal to go right back to Texas. Kind of a lot of money for Eovaldi. I knew he was going to get a good deal, and I expected him to maybe get 3 years. $75 million though. That's $12 million more than Usei Kikuchi, and Eovaldi is a more proven pitcher. But $25 million per. Sean Manaea's price just went up a little bit. Sean Manaea is looking at this and saying, all right, Eovaldi's 35. I'm going to be 33. I should be able to get that same contract, but add a 4th year to it. And maybe that is the asking price now. 4 years, $100 million for Sean Manaea. I'd still do it. It's not my money. Steve Cohen can afford it. But we'll see if they are going to swim in those waters. I will also note, I talked about this early on in the offseason. It was in the Jacob deGrom episode that I did, and the 3rd segment was devoted to John Gray. That's because I really felt like they were going to try to trade John Gray because they have talked about needing to trim some payroll. You now add a pitcher at $25 million. You have deGrom at 40. Tyler Mahle is making 16.5. John Gray is a free agent after this upcoming season. He's making $13 million. I think they're going to shop that deal around a little bit. And you can go back and hear my full analysis of the arsenal and everything else. I would not be mad at all if the Mets traded for John Gray. If he was in the market, I'd be all over him as one of these guys that the Mets could get more out of. And $13 million is now cheap for a starting pitcher, which is insanity. I already mentioned Andres Gimenez was traded. What else we had? Jake Berger was traded. Here's the last kind of interesting rumor that does relate to the Mets. Nolan Arenado has a 6-team list that he would waive his no-trade clause for. The Angels, the Dodgers. He's a California kid. That makes sense. Phillies. There's been some talk of them shopping Alec Boehm. Could they trade Alec Boehm? Slide Arenado into that third base slot for them. That makes some sense. Red Sox. Move Devers to first, I guess, and trade Tristan Casas. I don't know. Maybe. Oof, that'd be a bad deal for the Red Sox if they send Casas the other way. Padres, Mets. So he does have the Mets as one of the teams he would waive his no-trade clause for. Makes sense. They just signed Juan Soto. They have Lindor. It's a team that clearly has a chance to win. I'm shocked the Angels are on that list. I guess that's solely for going back home. And they have Rendon, right? So what do you do there? Who moves off third? Probably guy that doesn't play at all. I talked about Nolan Arenado. There's a full podcast on it. If you want my take on Nolan Arenado, I did a whole show on it earlier on in the offseason. And my read on it then was he is owed, I believe, $51 million over the next 3 seasons. That's off the top of my head, but I think it was something like that, where the average annual value that the Mets would be obtaining was less than $20 million, because how that's calculated, it's not the total value of the deal. It's the total value of the guaranteed money you're inheriting. So if the Mets inherited $51 million over 3 years, that would be his luxury tax hit. There is $50 million in deferred money. If the Mets took that on, they could get Nolan Arenado for free, basically. I don't think you have to trade much of anything. Maybe you send some low-end prospects. The highest value asset I think you're trading third baseman for third baseman. You're sending Brett Beatty the other way, sort of just clearing him out, giving him a chance with another organization, and you're taking on Arenado and you're sliding Vientos to first. The problem, as I talk about on that full show, Nolan Arenado has declined offensively the last couple of years. He's even declined defensively a little bit. He's still elite, and having Arenado and Lindor on that left side of the infield would be incredible for Mets pitchers. Clay Holmes with those ground balls might pitch to a 2.8 ERA. I mean, Arenado can still pick it, and that would be excited to see. My problem with that deal is if you're doing it, you're most likely going to say goodbye to Pete Alonso. I'd rather see them bring Pete back. Maybe that's just my personal bias. But I did say on that show, again, probably a month ago, I feel like I should listen to it myself to see how well it aged. I did say if you sign Juan Soto, it'd make more sense to be in on Nolan Arenado, because you're getting an offensive powerhouse already. And at that point, Soto sort of replaces Alonso and then some. And then Arenado is going to hit 5th in the Mets lineup. It'd probably be Lindor, Soto, Vientos, Nimmo, Arenado. I mean, and who knows? Maybe you get out of St. Louis, winning situation. You are hitting a couple spots behind Juan Soto. Maybe that discipline, which actually Arenado has. That's the one thing he still does have. He still has good plate discipline, doesn't strike out a lot, but he just isn't impacting the baseball anymore. I'm not all in on it, but I would not be mad at it. Like, I'd prefer Nolan Arenado over spending $24+ million potentially on Christian Walker. I think I'm more in on Arenado than getting Carlos Santana or Paul Goldschmidt as like a 1-year stopgap in free agency, because he doesn't cost anything as far as prospects. I could be talked into Nolan Arenado, but I still much prefer just simply re-signing Pete Alonso, rolling with what you got, because I think you need that big bat in your lineup, and you need that protection for Juan Soto. If you have Vientos and Alonso, you got a couple of guys that have the potential to hit 40 home runs for you. And Alonso, you have a guy that's done it time and again. That's still where I would go here, but it is exciting that at least that a superstar like Nolan Arenado, though he's obviously past his prime a little bit, but a guy like that wants to play for the Mets. That just shows you more changing perception of the Mets within the industry. So I think that's cool to find out, but I still don't believe the Mets are going to really dive headfirst into the Nolan Arenado market unless Pete Alonso prices out for them where they're not comfortable signing him. And then you're sort of looking at your options, and you could get to a point where it makes enough sense to do it. I'm looking really quick to see if there's any breaking news that I should talk about before I hit the end button on this recording. And I'm not seeing anything that is jumping out. So tomorrow, final day of the winter meetings, I expect some things to happen. I believe my internet is finally situated where I can go live on YouTube when things take place. So if something happens, I will jump on a live show, and I'll still probably do a typical episode of Locked On Mets that'll go up on Thursday morning, recapping any and everything that happened at the winter meetings in the final day. I expect it to be a very crazy one. We'll see if the Mets sign Sean Manaea, Pete Alonso, who knows, or if they get somebody else that we're not expecting. Maybe it is a Walker Buehler. Maybe they pull off a trade. The world is their oyster right now. David Stearns has a lot that I'm sure he's parsing through, and I'm excited to see what comes next. As always, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. After your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. By Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.